9 FM here in Leicester. My name is Batool Al Toma, and I'm going to be taking you through for the next hour. Thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to call with regards to anything that we're discussing this morning, which will be to do with conversion to Islam, please ring us on 077 488 55055. That's 077 488 55055. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome to everybody. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam wa barak ala Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wa qala rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. So I hope this program at 10 a.m. this morning is not going to catch all of you in bed, that you've gone, dropped the kids off at school and come back and just crawled under the duvet. If you have and you're still awake, welcome to the program, and we hope that you will pick up the phone and call us, or at least listen to the program, and we hope that you'll get a great deal of benefit from it. So here we go then. So this morning I wanted to speak about conversion to Islam, but not from your usual regular sort of run-of-the-mill conversion. I've got two very nice friends here joining me today, and you'll see as we go along what the nature of the program is, inshallah. So one of them is both of them are from outside Leicester. There's a reason for that. I didn't want to necessarily identify or be able to have somebody identifiable on Leicester Radio Ramadan, and I just want them to be able to speak freely and comfortably. So I've got Soraya and I've got Sana. Good morning, salam alaikum to you both.
Wa alaikum assalam and good morning, Auntie Batool.
Alaikum salam. Oh yes, I don't think I mentioned, is my name Batool Al Toma? I don't think I even mentioned that. Actually, I'm the founder director of an organization called the Convert Muslim Foundation. You can find us at www.convertmuslimfoundation.org.uk, and on Facebook, Convert Muslim Foundation, and on Twitter, Convert Muslim. Isn't that it, Soraya? Convert Muslim?
It's Convert Muslims UK. Convert Muslim UK.
Convert Muslim UK. Okay. So we're on Twitter at Convert Muslim UK. Okay, Soraya. So I'll start with you first, because I think you might have to leave a little bit early, and then I'll come on to Sana. But I'd like us sort of to talk together and have a nice conversation. So Sana, or Soraya, can you give us a little bit of background as to your origins and your conversion to Islam? Inshallah.
Sure, Auntie Batool. So I'm of Indian heritage, and I was born Roman Catholic in Mumbai, in India. When I was around 14 actually, my mother converted to Islam, and I was this young teenager with a Muslim mother suddenly out of the blue, and a Christian Catholic father, and I decided I was going to be atheist, just to be rebellious. But then I started exploring faith. I explored my own faith, Christianity, and I read the Bible page to page. I was brought up in a very spiritual household, so I understood faith. Faith was important to me.
So this was back in India.
This was back in India, Auntie Batool. And so, I started reading the Bible page to page. And, I think I got to, very quickly I began, through my reading of the Bible, to realize that there was something, more to God. There was more to knowing him. And I remember getting to the Gospel according to St. John, and God talks about, the unlettered one. Jesus talks about the unlettered one who was going to come and speak God's own words. And, from what little I knew about Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with him, yes. It seemed that was it. And so I kind of, my heart knew I liked Islam, but I refused to convert. I was being rebellious. And so read a bit about Hindu spirituality, again dabbled in atheism, but ultimately came to Islam. I think Surah Ikhlas, my mother sent me Surah Ikhlas in a letter. And yeah, I used to read it on my rosary with my Hail Marys and my Our Fathers. And at the end of it, I knew I was going to convert to Islam. Alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. I'll just pop over to Sana now. Sana, what was the origins of your journey?
So I come from a Punjabi family who are of Sikh faith, and I, like Soraya, was quite rebellious. Doing my A-levels, I picked philosophy of religion. I was in a class with a bunch of Catholics and Muslims, and my friend and I were just challenging. And, you know, I guess a lot of the students didn't know enough about their faith.
This was here in the UK, was it, Sana?
It was, yes. Yeah, in Birmingham. So I was born here and raised here. And yeah, so that was in my like when I was around 17, 18, 19. And then around 24, I got to a point in my life where I wasn't depressed or anything, but I just didn't understand the point of life. But why are we doing all of this? What's the point? In the end, we'll lose everybody that we know. And it just didn't make any sense to me. So I started reading into religion, and yeah, one thing led to another, and I ended up, Islam just, I guess, didn't feel like it was a choice. It felt like it chose me in some ways.
Yes, as a lot of converts to Islam say, actually, that it was a process, but not necessarily one that they set out on, but one that sort of just, you know, they got to a roundabout, and the kind of the exit from the roundabout was already decided for them. I'm just going to bring in somebody else here who is not with us, but who just sent me a little piece here because she didn't want to be identified. But she sent me a little piece, and we'll call her Hajar, just, you know, to give her a name, inshallah. She said, growing up in a strict Hindu household, there were many signs that were taboo, many things that were taboo. The most outspoken and awful thing one could do was to marry a Muslim. These views my parents brought with them after moving to the UK, views stemming from the cultural and religious hostilities back in India where they were born. Now I'm going to go back to India with you, Soraya, and just, does that ring any bells? Does that sort of flag up any problems that you faced in your initial conversion journey in India?
So, Auntie Batool, I was brought up in a robustly, you know, Catholic context. My family were, you know, I come from a family of church builders, and, you know, my grandfather, who was a farmer, sent off the fatted calf, you know, veritable to the church every Easter, I think. So I did not encounter Hindu, you know, rejection.
Yes.
But what I did encounter was, you know, my grandmother and my extended family, and indeed my father initially, although not now, they were quite against it. You know, Muslims in India are often seen as the sort of less literate, the less, you know, the less civilized, the less sort of, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, the less educated almost. And there was me, and Christians are seen as sort of the English speaking class almost. And I was leaving sort of civilization for something that was lesser. And for a long time, you know, our extended family didn't talk to us. My father didn't speak to us. For a few months, he felt like I had, he felt a little rejected by me and the rest of the family. But
I suppose naturally, really.
Yeah. But I will say about my dad, though, he did come back, and he's the person who bought me my first Qur'ans and my first hijabs. And you know, 15 years down the line, I've been a convert much longer now, but after, you know, a while, everybody came around. My grandmother has halal Christmas dinners now. So yeah, it's better now.
Lovely. Well, that's really pleasant, you know, and lovely to hear. I'm just going to quote a little bit more from Hajar here, maybe, and then go back to you, Sana. Hajar says, when I was young, I was often scolded for having Muslim friends, to the point where when I was allowed to have them come over to my house, my parents used to make them eat out of plastic plates and not our glass ones, as that's what their parents had taught them. And that's understandable. I mean, this is coming from a very sort of difficult historical background of partition and historical differences between Muslims, Sikh, Hindu, and so on, and India generally, and Pakistan. As we grew older and my parents got used to the diversity of Leicester, they chilled out a bit. However, there was always that reminder, be friends with them, but you don't date them. Sana, does that sort of ring any bells with you?
Yeah, I mean, we were brought up so anti-Muslim, anti-Pakistani. I think it probably goes back to the history between the two countries. And yeah, it's like it's the other side, and it's the last thing you want to be mixing with. It's almost like you're a traitor, you know, you betray your own people after, and it wasn't such a long time ago when all of that happened, so it's still quite raw for them.
Yes.
And yeah, it is. But
and I suppose it's carried on really in families, you know, as part and parcel of their history. And the very reason why they ended up maybe where they did due to partition, and maybe having to make the journey to the UK in order to find a better life, possibly.
Yeah, possibly. Also at the time, there was a lot of bloodshed and a lot of monstrosities that occurred, which,
Yes.
you know, our grandparents would have been small children at the time. So it's... yeah, it's interesting, but you know what? What's really interesting is that my grandparents are not as anti as my parents, and then maybe that transition to the UK, where they're trying to hold on to something. And they're an interesting generation in themselves,
Right.
because of their journeys, you know, and being confused between cultures of, are we English or are we Indian, and what is going on? So in the midst of all that, you know, they've got a child who wants to, you know, follow Islam, and it's just quite a lot to process.
Yes, yeah, and I think we'd probably identify with that. What do you think about that, Soraya? You know,
Auntie Batool, I've done a bit of, you know, research around partition. As you know, I'm an academic, and what we do find is, you know, your grandparents, Sana, will probably have, especially if they were pre-partition, they will also have memories of friendships with Muslims and friendships across borders, religious as well as cultural borders. But what we find is when these, you know, when you come to the next generation, they don't have the memories of friendship at all. All they have are these memories of partition that's probably been, you know, told to them through various lenses, and all they remember is the killing and the sadness and the, you know, families being separated, and they have nothing to offset that. You know, they don't have those memories of friendships to offset it. And so I think that is why also, you know, their memories are kind of, their attitudes
skewed,
are kind of harder.
Yes, in that direction. And, you know, that's also very understandable. I can imagine as an Irish person, you know, lots of Irish people came over here to the UK to work, you know, before Ireland became a republic and got its freedom from British colonization. And I'm sure the Irish who came here were more Irish than the Irish, in a sense. You know, it's a way people have of trying to hold on to their identity and their background and culture and so on. And I suppose actually the tragedy of partition and the bloodshed and the terrible aftermath of that would blot out any kind of friendships and connections that they had, and recollections even of those friendships that they had with other people back.
But I will say this much, Auntie Batu, because I grew up in India, and I only came to this country in my late 20s.
Yes.
But growing up in India, I went to university there, and, you know, my friends were from diverse faith backgrounds, you know, so I had Hindu friends and Sikh friends and Muslim friends and Christian friends, and I was often and we all got on well together. I did get the odd comment that I was the weirdest Muslim they had ever come across. But
Weirdest.
they, but we were all brilliant and we got on. And so the younger generation, at least in India, found it possible to move away from that. Although I will also admit that politics in India at the moment are again, very
yes,
strange.
very, very touchy and delicate. Sana, again, you grew up here in the UK, and I guess, going to school in Birmingham, you would have had a wide selection of friends that, there would have been probably no divide lines or lines drawn between friendships that you would have had at school. You would have been, friendly.
Yeah, it was a very, diverse in many ways, but the number of Muslims was still very few. I live on the west side of the city, and there maybe were 4 or 5. We didn't know the difference between one another. We were very, even in color, you just didn't differentiate in that way.
Yes.
And then later, when I converted, I started analyzing who was what at school. And I reached out to some of my classmates because I needed connections and I needed people who would understand what's going on. So, and I was able to, I'm still connected to about 3 or 4 individuals from school now, and now I'm 39 now, so it was a really long time ago. Yes. And at that time it would have been about 10 years later that I reached out to them, and they were so delighted, but it was even a task figuring out who were the Muslims, and it was from their names in the end that you realized. But at the time, you didn't really you didn't differentiate. It's definitely not on a religious basis,
Right. That sounds really comfortable and comforting as well. That you were all just mucking in together there in school and sort of enjoying each other's company and all the rest. Was it a predominantly? Were there a lot of young Asian girls at the school?
There were, and the majority of them would have been probably from a Sikh or Hindu background.
Right.
We also had a lot of Caucasian and Afro-Caribbean and even a few others that you knew they were different. Like there was a lad who was Palestinian, and it was just recently that I thought, oh, it all makes sense. We just didn't process things that aren't relevant to me, sort of thing,
Okay, so I'm going to go back to Hajar here. So Hajar says, so when I converted at 17, I knew what I was doing would not be received well by my family. When my younger brother took his Shahada, so actually there are 2 of them in this Hindu family who took their Shahada, a few months after me, I knew that I could make things very difficult for him, probably because, she had converted. She had converted actually before him, yeah. I chose to hide it from my parents. So she chose to hide her conversion to Islam from her parents and to practice in secret so that we could get to grips with our faith without that intrusion, which is very understandable because a lot of converts to Islam need time to establish their own sense of self-confidence and confidence in the knowledge of Islam first before they sort of throw things out into the public arena, so that we could get into grips with it without the intrusion. I also knew that if I told them that I may have to leave and then they would never know Islam as a beautiful thing, more than as a thing that stole their child. So she was trying to use the opportunity of keeping a secret to be able to show how Islam had changed their lives. So I stayed. I tested my own patience and have spent a good part of a decade doing dawah without giving Islam as a name to it. In turn, I've seen my parents soften to it, and I know now if I were to tell them, it may not go great, but it would go a ton better than it would have years ago. They are simply just more educated about Islam now. This is very, it was very upsetting reading this, actually, you know, because here's somebody living a kind of a double life, or trying to be such a good Muslim and living Islam in the spirit of Islam as it should be, in terms of not wanting to upset your parents, but also trying to show Islam through being a good child, a good family member. What do you think about that?
Sounds like you're reading out my story there.
Yeah, really.
You know, it's very much the same for me, and it's been 15 years now, and I just quietly get on with things under the radar. And yeah, there would be a difference in just the amount of time I spend with my parents, and a whole lifestyle adjustment. So they've seen massive changes in me, and I think deep down they're well aware of what's caused those changes, but we haven't had that conversation. And I've been thinking recently that, you know, maybe I'm making such a big thing out of it, but loyalty, you know, is what's central to our culture. And I think it's more of a personal thing. And I was reflecting yesterday how most of the prophets of Islam would have also been converts, and I was finding quite a lot of comfort in that. And so I think I think it's got to a point where it's just a big thing for me, but if I said it out aloud, I think everybody else would probably get over it in a matter of days, have been 15 years now. Right. So whereas for me, it's that confidence in who I am, and all of that education I've had behind me over all these years now, it does strengthen you, but the strength you get from your family is something very special. And you know, you can feel vulnerable without.
Of course. And there's a lovely ayah in the Quran that said, Rabbana irhamhuma kama rabbayani saghira. Oh Allah, lower the wings of your mercy to them as they did to me when I was a child. And, you know, lots of people say that, oh, you know, you're Muslim now, you shouldn't have any problems about your parents, you shouldn't worry, you shouldn't even pray for them. You know, and of course, that's a verse in the Quran that us as converts to Islam also come upon, and it's not like we can jump over it or delete it or deny it. It's something that we too must apply to our parents, because they looked after us so well. Soraya, how do you feel about hearing all of that? I think you probably had some difficulties as well. I mean, your dad wasn't too pleased about it all, so that must have been upsetting and heartbreaking, really.
Yes. I mean, I think for me, you know, my mother was already Muslim. She had become Muslim 2 years before me. And you know, that caused problems for my parents' marriage. And for me, it was this thing, you know, am I choosing Islam or am I choosing between my parents almost? And that was heartbreaking. But, you know, in the end, I found Islam. And I accepted it, or Islam found me, actually, because I don't quite know when I became Muslim. I just became it. And very quickly after me, I am the eldest at home. And so my brother and sister who were younger than me sort of just followed in my footsteps. That's a very Indian Asian thing to do. Yeah. And so we were strength in numbers. We were 4 converts. And my poor Papa
was out on the periphery. Soraya, you know, so your mum stayed with your dad?
Kind of.
The marriage remained strong.
The marriage remained strong. They live, you know, they have their practicalities. They live in different parts of the country. Yes. But they are still attached, very fond of each other.
Oh,
and the marriage is strong.
Yes.
But what I will say, Auntie Batool, about Papa is he was only angry with us for a few months, maybe. And then he started to see the impact of Islam on me. I think he was always very possessive of me. I'm his eldest daughter, his beautiful princess. And he saw that because of Islam, suddenly my clothing, I didn't wear a hijab at the time, but he saw I was dressing modestly. I was 16 and I wasn't interested in going out too much with boys. And he also said to me, when he saw me praying on my musalla, it gave him great peace. So Papa was only angry for a few months, and then, you know, He's been brilliant. He's been my rock.
One of the saddest things, Soraya, is that, you know, here in the UK, if there's a husband and wife who are already married, who are not Muslims, and the wife converts to Islam, a lot of people in the community try to force her to leave her marriage, to break up her marriage. Now, I have spoken to scholars about this and sent this question to the Fatwa Council of Europe many years ago, and they came back and said, no, this cannot happen. This is not within the spirit of Islam. And that the marriage outweighs the shahada for the woman, in the sense that her contract of marriage outweighs the shahada, and that the marriage must remain intact, unless, of course, the husband is against her being a Muslim. We have to take a break now, so inshallah we're going to come back a little bit later. Ramadan Leicester on 87.9 FM. Welcome back. If you'd like to give us a call about anything you've been listening to on our programme today, please give us a call on 077 488 55055. That's 077 488 55055. My name is Batool Al Toma, and I'm the founder director of the Convert Muslim Foundation. And we're talking today to some people who have converted to Islam, but are not from your sort of entirely, they are British background, but possibly we could call them British Asian background. Is that what you might call yourselves?
Yes, absolutely, Auntie.
Oh, okay. So just before we had the break, Soraya, you were talking about your mum and dad, who your mum converted to Islam in India, and so did you, from a Catholic background, and your dad didn't, but they remained together. And I was telling you that here in the UK, particularly from probably the Asian background community, you will have a lot of pressure on somebody who's converted to Islam who are already married, particularly the woman, that her marriage must be terminated. And I said that I had contacted Sheikh Abdullah Al Judair, who was the leader of the Fatwa Council of Europe, to take this into consideration and to do a very long investigation into it and historical probe into this situation within Islam, and to come back to me, because I felt that this was really against the spirit of Islam, that as conversion to Islam would break up a marriage and a family, children, and all sorts of things. So it just didn't sit well with me, and I just really wanted him to explore it all. And he came back and said, that there was no reason why the marriage should be broken up, and that the contract of marriage superseded the contract of the Shahada for the lady, and therefore that the marriage must remain intact, particularly if the husband was accepting of the whole thing and allowing her to practice her Islam, to pray, to do whatever needed to be done. And in fact, I had a phone call from a lady recently, and she said, no, her husband was very supportive, and the whole family were now on halal meat and halal food and all the rest. And, the whole family were getting on with the situation, and she was quite happy and contented and enjoying the experience. So what did you feel that the same pressure was on your mum?
Yeah, the same pressure, a lot of pressure on my mum, and more so on my mum than on my dad. But, in the end, they had grown up children. They had a 16, 17-year-old daughter and two other kids. But what they did do is, they stayed together, alhamdulillah, but they had practical considerations in place. Papa worked in Saudi Arabia, Mummy lived and worked in Bombay, and even to date, while they're committed to each other, there is also that separation, and sometimes I do feel for them, because it is, especially now as they're older, it is not ideal, but it is one of those things, and given how much my father has supported us, it is sad. I cannot claim that I can, get my head around it. And it's not it is partly my problem, but it is also for them to rationalize and decide for themselves.
Yes.
But they have remained committed to each other, but they've always, lived in different places. And then we come together for holidays, we come together as a family. Now with COVID, and with travel restrictions, it's been harder for them, especially for my father. But alhamdulillah, I'm glad that they are still strong,
Okay, so I just wanted to ask both of you, before you go, Soraya, because I know you have to rush off. Because you come from an Asian background, and obviously, clearly, present yourselves as being people who have come from Asian subcontinent, or at least your families have. Do you find that when you go into a mosque as a convert to Islam, that you fall into some kind of black hole of conversion where you're treated as maybe, an Asian person who's just a born Muslim, and you don't get the support and the help and the guidance that you might have needed so badly.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in India, Auntie Batu, like I said, I always stood out as one of those weird Muslims, and people say you're not quite Muslim. And then I started wearing the hijab just so that people would think of me as Muslim. And that worked a little bit, but they'd still say you're not quite, you're a little weird. But when I came here, people just think of me as a Muslim. And in some ways, that was very refreshing, because I always wanted to look like a Muslim. But in other ways, I do wonder, I don't have that support, and I sometimes get weird looks because my surname is not Khan or Sheikh, and I don't speak Urdu. They're like, how can you be a Muslim if you don't speak Urdu? So I do get that a lot. And when I went on Hajj with my husband a few years ago, there was a white convert, and he got special treatment. There were black converts who had to be really rigorous with their paperwork and demonstrate that they were really converts. And me as the Asian convert, nobody even noticed that I was a convert. So I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I do wonder whether there needs to be more attention, more understanding that converts are of all races and all ethnicities, and so we need to put different kinds of support in place. But again, I've been a convert for very, very long now, and so I can deal with it. I can deal with whatever I get.
Yes.
I'm still thought of as a weird Muslim in some places, and in other places I'm thought of as whatever people want to make of me, they can.
And Soraya, I mean, you are an academic now. You've got a PhD. You're a doctora. Yes, and mashallah, you've done really well, and you've studied, and there are lots of articles and journals and everything that you write for, and mashallah.
When I converted to Islam, Auntie Batul, I was very clear, and I'll have to go in 2 minutes. I was very clear I wanted to do dawah, and I wanted to work towards the cause of Islam. But, like other good Asian children, I got myself a master's degree in business and worked for a few years, but I was always restless in my very cool investment banking HR job. I was always restless. And finally, after September 11, I decided to quit because I really wanted to work for the cause of Islam. And I didn't know how it was going to pan out, but Allah had His plans. Somehow I ended up in academia, and everything I do now in academia, I'm a feminist sociologist of religion who researches British Islam, and everything I do is geared towards, clarifying misconceptions about Islam. But my sheikh once said to me, do not try to defend Islam, Saria. There's no need for that. But what you need to do is celebrate its beauty and make its beauty well known. And that is what I try to do in my work in different ways. Inshallah, may Allah accept
and
it.
You do it so well, Soraya. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Soraya. And I know that you're busy and you have to run off because your children need you. And so we really appreciate it.
My apologies for having
Not
to dash
at all.
off. It's been an honor to be here. Bye-bye.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much. MashaAllah. Assalamu alaikum. Sana, I'm just going to read out a little bit more that Hajar sent to me yesterday, because I do want to include her in the program, and even though we're going back a bit now, but we'll go forward again. She said, in Hinduism, culture and tradition is so important. And I think you mentioned that yourself, the reliance on culture and tradition, and the importance of that. It's the backbone of the society, and to go against that, a family would take the risk of being an outcast. It's always seemed silly to me. Something so personal as my own relationship with God would need judging by an entire society who it does not affect. But that is their way, and I have met so many other Hindus who have faced the same issue and tried so hard to change these ideologies that are so embedded in our communities. The Muslim community is a beautiful thing. In many ways, it is so accepting, helpful, and full of love. However, like everything else, some parts are flawed. I feel like the convert care part is lacking, to say the least. People mean well, but can also be very ignorant. And we just discussed this with Soraya. Sana, do you feel, or did you have the same feeling that sometimes as a convert to Islam from an Asian background, you kind of fall into this like black hole, and your needs and your requirements are not met as a convert, but more so as a born Muslim, you're regarded?
I think there's two sides to it. And on one hand, like Saria was saying, you know, you fit in, and that's wonderful. But then on the other hand, there are times where you do need a lot of support. And having been Muslim now for like 15 years, I'm in a very different place to where I was, say, 10 years ago even. So yeah, it's you know, a bit hit and miss on that one. But I mean, I
Yes.
can give you an example. I was in a beginner's Arabic class, and all the other kids at the time were all Asian, and they knew the bare bones of it, whereas I was a complete novice, and it was supposed to be a beginner's class. And I think it was just the expectation that everybody would know how to do certain things or read and write, or so I was really out of my depth, and I felt quite ashamed. And rather than
Ask for help.
yeah, it was, well, I felt like this beginners class wasn't really for me, because there weren't any beginners here. I probably was the only revert in there. And yeah, so they all already had a lot of skill, you know, especially when it came to reading.
Yes.
So yeah, it was quite difficult, but you know, I put in the extra work, and I caught up. And yeah, I had a friend who,
Yeah.
it was the friends, it was the companionship of the other
Yes.
students
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
really got me to pull
People
my.
who knew you from before.
No, we'd met in the class, but
All right.
I'm quite good, alhamdulillah, relationship building, and
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
reaching out. But it was just the assumption by the sheikh that, you know, everybody would know that, and because
Yes.
and there I was overlooked and
Yeah. Yeah.
didn't get the support I needed. And as far as I was aware, I was joining a complete beginners class,
Yes.
but I
Yeah.
was the only real ultimate beginner in the class.
I
Yeah.
think I might know that class. I might remember that class, and I do apologize for that. I think that.
No, actually, no, it wasn't that one.
Was it not?
It was a local one here.
Oh, okay.
No,
Okay.
no. I was quite advanced by the time I got to you guys.
All right. Okay. So I'm just going to say that Hajar said, being brown, most people don't realize I'm a convert. I've occupied Muslim spaces for years and gone totally unnoticed. At first, I was a little bit jealous of the white converts who people flock towards. But I've also realized that when people find out you're a convert, there is usually an intrusive set of questions that follow. So maybe she felt that those questions, she might have been less open to those questions. So she said some of the questions here. Tell me your convert story. I'll tell you the most complicated part of my life so that you have a motivational story to take away. How did your family take it? I'm not always in the mood to discuss my complicated family dynamics, which really upset me. Thank you. Why don't you wear hijab? Did you convert for a man? No. Still single, but thanks for checking. Why do you bother with your family? They're not Muslim, so who cares? It's haram to be a vegetarian back when I was one, and no, it most definitely is not. Do you know how to pray? I often feel like asking back, do you? But I refrain. Giving up alcohol must have been hard. Actually, I was 17 and hadn't drunk more than once or twice by the time I converted. Giving up nail polish, though, now that was tough. You can't have male friends anymore. Okay, I'll just tell my childhood friends I can never speak to them again. Oh, your name is haram. Let me give you a Muslim name. And then proceed to introduce me to people by this new name. Firstly, no, my name is not haram. I don't want to change it. And also, if I did, maybe I'd like to pick it myself. Why don't you know Arabic yet? Because it's a very hard language to learn. So, you know, these are sort of questions that come up. And I'm sure, well, I'm assuming, Sana, that you might have had similar questions and similar comments made.
Yeah, absolutely. On one hand, you know, people get really excited to find out, but the reasons behind wanting to know, more often than not, they're inspired and motivated.
Yeah.
But you do get these questions.
Yeah.
And you know, have you checked the ingredients on those sweets? Or yeah, you're not allowed to wear those nails, right? Like that
Yes.
wasn't the top priority. Oh, you're a Muslim now, you need to pick a madhab. That was that was, I'm
Yes.
just like, I've just left behind me a whole you know, idea of sex and divisions, and I thought I was coming to something else, and now I'm introduced to all these, you know, where does it sort of end? And I've really had to find myself within all of that, and you know,
Yeah.
stick to just being, I
Yes.
just to be
Yes.
referred as just Muslim, and that's it, you know.
Yes, and I think Hajar mentions it really, you know, profoundly here. She said it's often hard to feel like I belong anywhere. I'm not Hindu and therefore not really a part of the community I grew up in. But I'll never really be Muslim enough to be part of the Muslim community. And I don't look like what people expect a convert to look like. It's taken years and building a good support system to feel like I really belong anywhere. At most, the most at home I am is with fellow converts who are usually just as confused as I am.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can relate to what she's saying, and
Yeah.
I think it's only recently, many years later now, that I'm accepted that I'm me, and I am Punjabi, I am from a Sikh background, I am Muslim, I am a Burmese, I am all of these things, and I'm a unique mix. And you know, the Quran is so supportive of all of that, in that, you know, we're taught that we will always feel like strangers here, and you
Yes.
know, and in many other ways, it's just how it is. And when we look back at our prophets and look at how what they went through, and
Yes.
it's not easy, and
No.
we have it a lot easier though than a lot of
Yes.
people.
Alhamdulillah.
You know,
Sana, I really want to talk about your work. You've worked in many countries in the world and you support refugees here and there and everywhere, which is wonderful. Can you tell me where that started?
so yeah, I think it was back in 2013. I was working in mental health and learning disabilities, sitting at my desk one afternoon, just decided to Google Muslim jobs, and there was a role going at a local charity, and I applied for that, which I got. And ever since, I've been working in the Muslim charity sector, and I think I just wanted to help. And while all of my jobs have always been in some way helping vulnerable people, you know, I learned that it was a sunnah to,
Yes.
or you know, support people and help people. So I wanted to follow that. And yeah.
So you've worked in Greece with refugees there. You've worked in parts of the Muslim world.
Yeah, and working in Greece was quite close to my heart, because for many of the refugees arriving there, it was the first time they were in a non-Muslim country. And you can imagine arriving in a Greek island for somebody who is from like Iraq or Afghanistan, and they will be seeing things they've never seen before. And you will have a lot of people leaving the faith. And so it was quite important to me to be out there, and the work I was doing, and to remind them, you know, where they're from and where they come from. And yeah.
Fantastic. And I have a great admiration for you. It's a really admirable work to be in, and I really wish you well, and long may it continue. Thank you so much, Sana. I'm afraid we're at the end of the program, and I really do appreciate your coming and joining us today. Thank you so very, very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.